Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change a person's whole world. Imagine celebrating your birthday all alone, with no one to clap, no one to sing, until a simple question turns that loneliness into a memory of love. Stay with me for this heart-touching story, and don't forget to subscribe to KindnessBreeze for more stories that will touch your heart. She had worked in the household for almost 2 years. Every day followed the same pattern, waking up early before the family, cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, and then finally going to bed long after everyone else. She had no weekends, no holidays, and no time for herself. Yet, she rarely complained. She knew her earnings were the only source of survival for her children living far away in her village. Today, however, was different. It was her birthday. For others, birthdays are filled with joy, family gatherings, phone calls, gifts, and laughter. But for her, it had been years since she had truly celebrated. Her children couldn't afford to send her anything, and she couldn't afford to travel to see them. She carried their pictures in her heart, but the absence of their voices echoed loudly in her silence. Earlier that morning, she had secretly kept aside a few coins from her weekly wages. On her way back from the market, she stopped at a small bakery and bought herself a tiny cake, just enough for one person. It wasn't fancy, just plain and simple, but to her, it was a symbol of her love for herself, a reminder that she still mattered, even if the world seemed to forget. As the evening settled and the house grew quiet, she placed the little cake on the table in the corner of the kitchen. There was no decoration, no balloons, no one waiting to sing. She lit a single candle, not because she needed it, but because she wanted at least one light to honor her existence. She closed her eyes. Memories flooded her mind, the sound of her children calling her Amie, the times when her husband was alive, the years when birthdays meant gathering around in their small home with laughter despite poverty. But those days were gone. Her husband had passed away years ago, and her children were struggling for their own survival. She opened her eyes, her vision blurred with tears, and softly whispered to herself, "Happy birthday to me." She blew out the candle, and for a moment, the room felt darker than it was. She picked up the knife and slowly cut a small slice of the cake. Eating alone was harder than she thought. It wasn't the taste that made her heart heavy, it was the emptiness. A celebration without anyone to share with hardly felt like a celebration at all. Loneliness sat with her at that table. She was used to working in the background, invisible to the world around her, but tonight, the silence screamed louder than ever. She tried to smile for herself, but the corners of her lips trembled. In that moment, she felt like a shadow in the very house she served. She wondered if anyone even remembered that she, too, had a life, a heart, and a birthday. And yet, despite the ache in her chest, she whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, for another year of life, for strength to keep going, and for the hope that maybe, one day, someone would see her, truly see her. As she sat quietly at the kitchen table, wiping away the corner of her tears, she didn't notice that someone had walked in. It was the young man of the house. He had come down late at night to grab a glass of water, but what he saw stopped him in his tracks. There, in the dim light, sat the maid. In front of her, a half-eaten piece of cake, a candle already melted away, and eyes that spoke more than words ever could. She looked fragile, almost like a child abandoned at a celebration. He froze, unsure whether to step forward or quietly walk away. It felt personal, like he had stepped into a private moment of her pain. But something inside him refused to ignore it. He thought about all the times she had taken care of the family without expecting anything in return, how she always placed food on the table, ironed clothes neatly, and stayed up late when someone in the family was sick. She had been a silent presence, keeping the household running, and yet no one had ever asked how she felt, what she needed, or what her heart carried. And now, here she was, celebrating her own birthday alone. He took a deep breath and walked slowly towards her. She quickly tried to hide her tears, pretending to fix her dupatta, embarrassed to be seen in such a vulnerable state. But he gently smiled and said, I I didn't know it was your birthday." She lowered her gaze, forcing a faint smile. "It's nothing, sir. Just another day." He looked at the tiny cake and then at her, realizing how much courage it must have taken to buy even that for herself. With a warm tone, he asked, "May I join in?" For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had grown used to being invisible, used to being treated only as the maid. But now, someone was asking to sit beside her, not out of duty, but out of kindness. Her eyes welled up again, but this time, not just from sadness. She nodded slowly, almost in disbelief. He pulled a chair and sat across from her. Then, to her surprise, he sang softly, "Happy birthday to you." His voice was gentle, yet it filled the emptiness of the room. She covered her face with her hands, laughing through her tears. It had been so long since anyone had sung those words for her. He cut another slice of cake and placed it on her plate. "You shouldn't eat alone," he said with a smile. That small act of kindness changed the air in the room. What was once silence now felt warm, alive. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. Someone had noticed her, acknowledged her existence, and made her feel human, worthy of being celebrated. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a party with decorations or expensive gifts. It was simply one person choosing kindness over indifference. And sometimes, that is all it takes to turn tears into a smile. As they sat together, sharing small bites of the simple cake, something extraordinary happened, something that money could never buy. The walls that separated maid and master slowly melted away. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just part of the background, but part of a family. Word spread quickly in the household. The boy's mother peeked in to see what was happening. At first, she was surprised. But then, when she saw the maid's teary smile, something inside her softened too. One by one, other family members joined. Soon, what began as a lonely moment in the corner of the kitchen transformed into a warm gathering around the table. The father brought some juice from the fridge, the children clapped their hands and laughed, and the mother even took out a few sweets she had saved. The maid, who had lit just one candle in silence, now found herself surrounded by voices singing "Happy Birthday" with genuine affection. She pressed her hands together, overwhelmed, whispering, thank you so much. I didn't expect this." Her voice cracked, and her tears flowed freely, not from sadness, but from a happiness so rare it almost felt unreal. The young man smiled and replied softly, "You've done so much for us every single day. Tonight, it's our turn to do something for you." Those words hit her heart deeply. All her life, she had served others, her family back home, and now this household, but rarely had she been served with kindness in return. That night, she didn't feel like a maid. She felt like a human being who mattered. As they laughed, cut another slice, and shared stories, she realized that love doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, in a smile, in a chair pulled close, in a voice that asks, "May I join in?" That evening left a mark not only on her, but on the family too. They began to notice her more, to ask how she was feeling, to appreciate her efforts, to treat her with dignity rather than just obligation. And she, in return, worked with even more devotion, not because she had to, but because she felt respected. The loneliness that once sat with her on her birthdays was replaced with a new memory, one where she wasn't invisible. She carried that night in her heart like a treasure. Years later, when she would tell her children about her life in the city, she would recall that birthday. Not because of the cake, not because of the candle, but because of the kindness that made her feel less alone. And that is the beauty of kindness. It costs nothing, yet it has the power to heal, to connect, and to remind us all of a simple truth: we are human first, and humanity is the greatest bond we share.